We start with a Republican family feud. Dana Milbank is a political columnist for the Washington Post, and Sam Stein is the White House correspondent for the Huffington Post. Gentlemen, let me show you some data. There's good news for the president in terms of his overall approval rating, which is now up at 49%. That's 5 points higher than where it was last month, according to the new Washington Post ABC News poll. And part of the reason seems obvious, and that is this mess in Washington over the payroll tax extension. Look at these numbers from ABC News and the Washington Post poll. When asked who they trust to better handle the issue of taxes, President Obama now has a solid lead over congressional Republicans. That's 46 to 41%. It's a big change from just 2 months ago when Republicans had the upper hand over the president on that same issue. Dana Milbank, what do you make of it all?
Well, clearly the improvement in the president's numbers, I think we can agree, is nothing really the president has done per se. Yeah, there's been a slight downtick in unemployment, but things fundamentally really haven't changed. And the truth is this president has no business having numbers that high and being so strong in the horse race for the re-election when the economy is this bad. So you can only conclude that it's something that is scaring them about the other side. And we have two things going on. One is the rise of Newt Gingrich, which is obviously terrifying to many voters in the middle, and also this unbelievable spectacle. I can't take my eyes off it. I've been on the Hill the last 2 days, and it is just an absolute circus up there, and voters have to be saying, we can't possibly let these guys run the show.
Sam, does anybody coming out of this looking good?
Well, I think the polls indicate that the president does come out looking good. I mean, let's take a very sober look at this. Where we started was Democrats wanted to tax millionaires to pay for this payroll tax cut. Republicans said no way. They didn't even want to pay for the payroll tax. They didn't even want to pass the payroll tax cut. Now Obama has given up the millionaire surtax. Not only that, he's included the Keystone Pipeline language into the deal. And what has he gone for? Nothing. I think voters look at that. They say, okay, this man's willing to deal, the president, and he's not being met halfway by congressional Republicans. We need someone to actually get something done. Unemployment still remains a problem. There's 21 million under and unemployed people in this country. One person is at least trying to constructively create a solution. The other one is just moving away from him every time he puts his hand out.
And also, I think part of the narrative that troubles them is the fact that you have the Republicans so identified with the preservation of the Bush tax cuts, and now when there's a tax cut most identified with the middle class at a time when income disparity is being discussed like at no other point in our history, all of a sudden the Republicans are on the other side. Look, as you know, today the House voted to reject the payroll tax deal that passed overwhelmingly in the Senate this weekend. House Republicans are calling for a conference committee to negotiate between the House and Senate proposals. No Democrats voted with the Republicans today. President Obama then came into the briefing room to express his displeasure after the vote, and here's part of what he had to say.
The clock is ticking. Time is running out. And if the House Republicans refuse to vote for the Senate bill, or even allow it to come up for a vote, taxes will go up in 11 days. Democrats and Republicans in the Senate said we're going to put our fights on other issues aside and go ahead and do what's right. I need the Speaker and House Republicans to do the same.
Dana, there's been a role reversal. Now it's the president standing up and going to the nation arguing in support of a tax cut. What are the Republicans thinking? Put yourself in their position as watching these optics.
There seems to be a little bit of a panic going on right now, Michael. At first they were saying, look, we're going to just stay here until the Senate comes back into session. Now this afternoon we're hearing, well, maybe they just want to tiptoe home for Christmas after all. They really they back themselves into a corner here. And what's happening is even if the average American out there, it probably isn't following the nuance of the back and forth. They're saying, look, there's another mess on Capitol Hill. It's not the Senate this time. You know, Harry Reid's got his feet up somewhere. They're seeing only images of John Boehner and Eric Cantor and a lot of angry Republicans on the House floor.
Can I make a broader point, though? I mean, for the past 2 months, since he introduced his Jobs Act, which, by the way, very little of that Jobs Act will ever see the light of day, but since he's been talking about it, President Obama has been almost solely focused on job creation. We've seen House Republicans and Senate Republicans really focus their energy on where to pay for it. And I think that's a terrible contrast for them. Look at any vote, look at any public polling, and you'll see people care more about job creation, people more worried about the economy than they are about deficit. It's just a matter of fact. And if the president's going to spend 2 straight months talking about jobs and not be met by anyone else, that benefits him. It just has to happen that
You know,
way.
one consideration, of course, is how this is going to play at the top of the ticket, but you've got a third of the Senate, as usual, and the full House up for re-election, and it brings to mind something that Republican Senator Scott Brown of Massachusetts, who's running for re-election next year, said just today. He released a statement bashing his Republican colleagues in the House, and today he wrote, quote, "It angers me that House Republicans would rather continue playing politics than find solutions. Their actions will hurt American families and be detrimental to our fragile economy." Dana Milbank, you know, we talk about some of the more intransigent members of the GOP-controlled House. They're going to have to stand for re-election. You wonder when they're going to take the pulse of the folks at home as pertaining to the data that we've been sharing.
Right. Well, and a lot of the guys making things the most difficult right now are ones in fairly safe conservative districts. But yes, the thing's very difficult for their Senate colleagues in Massachusetts, in Nevada. The rise of Newt Gingrich has also put a drag on these guys as well. And at the same time, look, we don't know where the economy is going to be, you know, what kind of year it's going to be for Democrats. But the experience here seems to vindicate the recent change in Obama's strategy to take it to the Republicans and take a much more aggressive stance in laying out these differences. So at least the Democrats seem to have at least a game plan now.
Sam, this is reminiscent to me of the night that the attempt at a grand bargain between the Speaker and the President imploded, and each provided their own narrative. But I remember a takeaway, at least from my perspective, was to think that that Speaker Boehner just did not have control of the GOP members of the House. Now, I'm watching what's transpired in the last couple of days, and I'm coming to the same conclusion. What's yours?
No, there's no other conclusion to reach, and it's you almost feel bad for Speaker Boehner in a way, because while he is fighting Obama on one flank, he's getting badgered on another. And if you look at that same Washington Post ABC poll, one number that really stuck out to me was that 41% of self-identified Tea Partiers disapprove of Republicans in Congress, not Congress, Republicans in Congress. Sorry, that's 57 disapprove, 41 approve. That number was at 73 approved just last spring. So Speaker Boehner has no love from his base, and he constantly is looking over his shoulder, and he sees Eric Cantor just waiting for him to fall, and he has to balance these two interests, which is why you get some sort of schizophrenic legislation making going on here.
Congress has reached an all-time low in the latest Gallup poll. Listen to this, an approval rate of just 11%. That's the lowest number ever recorded by the organization which began tracking congressional approval 3 decades ago. Dana, you know, it used to be that if you were an incumbent, you had, what did the data say, 95% odds of being reelected. One wonders how incumbency plays in the cycle that we're heading into right now.
Well, most of the incumbents, as always, will be fine, but something does seem to have fundamentally changed here. It seems to have come unglued. Last night, in a private caucus meeting of the House Republicans, you had 10 members get up there and compare themselves to Braveheart. They're sort of the Mel Gibson character fighting the English nobility. When you have a caucus that is governed by that kind of thinking, you know, and the public is going to look at this and say, look, these aren't reasonable people running our country.
The passions.
Well, it's better because a couple months ago they're comparing themselves to The Town, so they're upping their movie choice, I feel like.
Passions were high on the floor of the House today. I'll give you an example. Democratic Congressman John Lewis had strong words for Republicans. Here it is.
What is happening here today is shameful. It is a disgrace. It is unreal. It is unbelievable. We can do better. If we fail today, how will you face your neighbor, family who are suffering? Where is your compassion? Where is your heart? Where is your soul?
Dana Milbank, where does it end? Give me the exit strategy.
That's the problem, is usually you can sort of see how these things work out. The disagreement here is fairly trivial, and it's not clear that the Democrats have any incentive to get in, so they may just let the Republicans stew in their own juice for many more days. And I don't know about you, but it looks like some people are canceling their holiday vacations.
Sam, it's a hard sell, I think, for those Republicans to go home and say, well, we're for this tax cut, but 2 months wasn't enough. I think many constituents will say, well, take the 2 months in February, you'll renew it. That's the way you always do it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, on these shows we tend to get really tied into the sort of inside game, but there are real-world consequences to this that will affect people in districts, and people are living paycheck to paycheck, and this will matter. And I think at some point Republicans are going to recognize that it's better for them to at least go 2 months and negotiate from there.
I think you're probably right. Dana Milbank, thank you. Sam Stein, thank you as well.